I don't know. I could not say he probably did it. Stop. I
You think
can't.
just instinct.
No,
You think he come on, 50?
Joe, you know you got a little bit of an advantage in this conversation.
What? Because I'm a woman?
No, that's not what I was getting at. I would say, Jesus, we're swinging from the fences
I'm kidding.
right out
I
the
was a
gate.
meme. I was a meme.
Yeah, I got you. It's just because I mean, I've obviously like kind of expressed myself at length here, so I guess you've had like
I
time
know.
to kind of
So I've
prepare
heard
yourself
it.
for this.
I
It's
mean,
fine
and
though.
I'm not. No. But I'm not. I honestly, there are lots of things that I agree with you on. I'm not coming here to like BTFO at all. I'm coming because I want to just clarify a few points. And there are some things I think that you have every right to feel as passionately as you
Hey,
do.
we're on. Okay, so I'm gonna open this up.
Fanatic, I want to see a beautiful face.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Fanatic.
Oh, I got you. I forgot.
Yeah.
I'll be forgetting. Let me turn my camera off here. Let me go. Frick.
Yeah.
Sorry. 30 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Tara Haka, for being so kind as to sub to the channel. Oh, and thank you, X Curbs, for gifting 551 gift subs. Thank you all. This is the support that we need. We cannot do it without you all. Thank you for being so kind as to support this channel, invest in this content that we're always trying to provide you. We're hoping we're providing you something of value here. So if you believe that is the case, then be so kind as to sub to the channel yourself, gift bits, gift sub, or use our PayPal button below. All good stuff. All good ways to support the channel. So like I said, this is a private panel rather than a regular open panel. I'll may pull a few individuals in, but let's start off with these two and see where it takes us. All right. Mr. Fanatic, he was just here and just being
Fanatic.
just being inflammatory as usual. Okay. So thank you for being here, Mr. Fanatic. Right.
Oh, sure.
Next, we have my special friend. Gotta let you know that we have an amazing woman, right? Her name is Joe, TheSillySerious. Even though you can't see that on screen, her name is Joe, TheSillySerious, and she is a wonderful person who actually works on these issues. She works on these issues and like for real life, for like a job and stuff. And she would like to have a talk about these things. So we're going to jump in. We had a great conversation last night about this very same topic, just me and her. But we're going to, yeah, it was fantastic. And now here we are again. So Joe, take it away. What were your concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I want to start actually, Fanatic, by giving you some concessions, right? Because there's stacks of stuff that I agree with you on in terms of your passion, right? Straight up, I can tell you that I'm never, ever going to excuse prosecutorial misconduct, no matter what the crime is, right? And I think this is one of those intersectional issues where you can't really look at it and excuse misconduct in the justice system, regardless of how heinous the crime is, because it ultimately leads to great deals of harm, and great deals of harm which disproportionately affect the Black community. So I'm with you there. I'm not in any way saying that this was just a technicality. This is something we should be outraged again about, because it undermines the grounds on which due process is built. It undermines any prosecutor making a deal. It undermines trust in the system and trust in the DA. So you're not going to find me trying to downplay this as a technicality. I think it was a gross miscarriage of justice. Secondly, I believe that claims of sexual assault, particularly in the Me Too era, and watch me lose everyone who supports me now for a moment, but I'll win them back, so I'm not too worried. I believe that in our current climate, being a sex pest is the worst thing that a person can be. Right. And so claiming that someone has raped someone is an easy way, not an easy way, but it's the popular way in the moment to get someone cancelled. Right. And so I understand your suspicions about this sort of being a show trial or something that has no merit being used to cancel an influential and successful Black man, a leader in the community, someone who did incredible things for the civil rights movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you there that can happen, and so your cynicism or suspicion that is occurring is warranted. It's not completely unwarranted because that does happen. My question is about a few things. Firstly, I understand why you're saying that if someone's found innocent in a court of law, that we shouldn't be able to say anything in society, wider society, about guilt because they've been found innocent, right?
No, but I wouldn't say that.
But no. But were you saying that it's that people can't say that he's a rapist if he's been found innocent in the court of law?
You can't say conclusively, sure. No. It has nothing to do with whether or not he's been found innocent in the court of law, because we recognize, like, sometimes there can be evidence, like, that someone's a rapist. For example, the R. Kelly situation, where he was very obviously a rapist. However, because of, like, him settling the things and whatever, like, whatever happened, the family being refusing to actually press charges or dropping the charges, I believe he paid them off. But for those reasons, then he couldn't be charged. But I would say that there was enough evidence that I watched with my own eyeballs as a freaking 15-year-old kid at the time, to see, like, oh, this dude's an actual rapist. So for that reason, I feel like we can say so even if there hasn't been a conviction. But I guess the underlying principle is there needs to be evidence to support the fact that he's a rapist in order for me to be willing to say someone's a rapist. It cannot be just, it's not going to be hinged solely on conviction or not.
Sure, and I want to clarify, not guilty, not innocent. Thank you, Annadelle. But like, I think something that is interesting, and you brought this up, right? You were talking about this. Sexual assault is particularly unique as a crime in how difficult it is to prove, right? It's like if you get robbed, you don't have to go and prove to someone that your house got robbed. Like it's there, the evidence is there. But given the difficulty in understanding what has occurred to you in a lot of instances, especially when it's not the sort of brutal stranger attack on the street, torture, very extreme case that people like to present rape as, when it's someone you trust, when it's someone you work with, when it's someone you have a relationship with, when you're not sure what part you played in it, when you're not sure if consenting to the drugs means that you consented holistically to everything that happened, when you're a Black woman and this is someone who you also think is important to your community, when you compound all of these facts which make you confused about your own experience, you might not come forward immediately. You might not come forward for ages, and that makes it almost impossible to gather evidence that is effective in terms of the judicial system.
Sure.
And I personally don't think the judicial system is good at handling sexual assault at all. And I don't think consent is meaningful because of what you said. You said these women, they consented to taking the drugs. Like, this is, how can you prove this is rape? And for me, consent doesn't make any sense, because what Bill Cosby really did is he failed to recognize the humanity and the autonomy and the individual rights of these women and respect their desires. And we can debate whether or not that is the case, right? But if you have,
how do you know that?
If you have 50 women, more than 50 women coming forward and saying, I feel really fucking shit about what happened, right? It's not people necessarily ganging up. These things happen in domino effect because one person speaks up against a powerful person, and then other people feel that they too have the strength to speak up because there's safety in numbers, right? And this is someone powerful that a lot of these women feel guilty about talking out against because this is America's dad. They don't want to say this about him, just like you don't want to, just like I don't want to. So, like, what I'm saying is I can understand that by the judicial standard, maybe Bill Cosby did nothing. But is there, you're very familiar with the evidence, you know? So is there anything in what you said, knowing that Bill Cosby is going to give an account which clears him, because that's human nature. You want to protect yourself, right? Is there anything in the evidence that would make you fall on the positive side of possibility, like erring on the side of the women being honest about the fact that maybe Cosby did something wrong?
I don't err on the side of, I'm firmly fixed in the idea of innocent until proven guilty. There is no amount of evidence that would make me err on the side of probably guilty, because probably guilty doesn't mean anything to me.
You understand that most people who sexually assault people never get charged, never even go to court.
Sure, and I think that that's disgusting. And I agree with you on the several steps. Okay, so let me go through a few. So the first thing is, you mentioned the statement that our judicial system is not particularly equipped with handling sexual assault cases. I believe that to be 100% true. And I think it's one of the problems, but it's one of the, I would say, necessary problems when it comes to this idea about innocent until proven guilty. And the reason why we do it, the underlying principle with innocent until proven guilty is the idea that the system is in incredible failure if ever an innocent person was to do time, right? We would much rather let a guilty man go free than to let an innocent person be charged or have their life taken away, right? Like most of us understand that. And so me understanding that, I have to always kind of check these things against the worldview of like, okay, so if that was to happen, I mean, if we start allowing things where we can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Like these are like the actual phrases that we use. If we can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this thing is true, then do we feel comfortable making these assessments, right? And for me, I don't. I would say, from my review of the evidence, it sounded like the vast majority of a great number of the witnesses were told like completely contrasting and contradictory stories when it came to the case endpoints. Go ahead.
Can I just it's a
Yeah,
side
fine.
note, I'm
Go
not
ahead.
but in sexual assault research, it's very, very common because it's quite a traumatic and confusing experience. And if you add the fact that quaaludes were involved and intoxicants were involved, it is very common to give confusing accounts of what happened.
For sure.
That is not, and that's part of another issue in prosecuting rape and sexual assault.
For sure.
It's difficult for people to find out what happened.
Yeah, I think and that's another unfortunate thing. And on top of that, you compound that with the fact that there was such a great deal. Our memories are incredibly fallible, right? Like we understand, like we a lot of times will think that we believe something, and then someone can point out to us something is completely wrong. Sometimes the things that we believe can be completely reinforced by other stimuli and things like that. So we're simply relying on memory is already shoddy enough. Add on multiple amounts of years to that, it makes it significantly worse. And I think all of those things are, while I will agree with you that these are things that make it inherently harder to prove sexual assault cases, I think that that is partially what's hanging me up. Because I think, yes, I understand that by nature, these things are, especially when you start introducing intoxicants, and then you include in something that can be, again, confusing because it's not always, like some things are great. Coercion can be great, right? Trauma can be whatever. When you add in all of these details, yes, they can complicate things. That's what makes me so alarmed when people can readily say he's a rapist, knowing all of these information, all of these details about how complicated it can be, how gray some of these areas are regarding coercion, regarding intoxication, and so on and so forth. When we understand how complicated these are, to be able to just arrive at a simple "this nigga's guilty" is problematic to me.
Okay, and I have a few things to say to that. Firstly, is your issue, would you be willing to grant that he did something wrong? If not rape, that he did something wrong? I can't hear you.
There we go. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to fix my mic.
Okay, while you're doing that, I
got it. So what would be the thing? Did what wrong?
Do you feel that the way that he treated the women who spoke out against him was not morally good behavior?
If their accounts are true, then sure.
Okay. And in terms of, like, obviously you're very aware of the evidence, but I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, right? One thing I do know is that consent, when looked at in a legal framework, isn't a binary. It's more of like a sociological investigation. It's not a clear cut yes or no. When they look at consent from a prosecutor's perspective, it a lot of things go in. So when you're talking about reasonable doubt, what constitutes, like, where's that line for you? Obviously, doubt is necessary. There's going to be doubt because these are people's stories. So at what point does that doubt become reasonable versus, like, because I would argue right now, and I totally understand why you're motivated to say these things, but I would argue that your doubt is unreasonable because I think that, and I think it's what you said before when you were yelling on the panel, my advantage, having heard you, right? You said that people were admitting within their question, within what they accepted, they were undermining their statement. So when you say to me that there has been prosecutorial misconduct because his Fifth Amendment rights not to violate and incriminate himself were violated by the prosecutor, you're telling me that he was honest and incriminated himself in the civil court. So if he was honest in the civil court and admitted to raping people or admitted to sexually assaulting people or admitted at least to doing something wrong.
Wait, he didn't admit to doing, no, but none of those things happened. He didn't admit to raping. He didn't admit to assault. He didn't admit to doing anything wrong. He didn't admit to any of those things. And you asked me the question. Let me answer the question really quickly. You asked me, when does the doubt become reasonable, and or what constitutes unreasonable versus reasonable? And I would say doubt becomes unreasonable in the face of a total lack of evidence, aside from inconsistent testimony from victims of something that supposedly occurred possibly 30 years ago.
Evidence?
That's what. Yeah.
What's good evidence in a sexual? Because is there not a preponderance of evidence if it's not one statement, and a lot of rape cases stand on one person's testimony. We're talking about, and I'm not talking necessarily legally, right? Because I honestly, like, I agree with you. The legal system's fucked. I don't have much stock in the legal system when it comes to sex crimes at all. But I'm saying in terms of the public psyche, how many women need to come forward for you to feel that doubt is no longer reasonable? If it were 200 women,
I would push this back. I would push back. Sure, I'd push back against this period, right? Because I would say simply a great number of people saying something isn't enough for me. I need better evidence than that. And here's the reason why, right? So like how many people does it need to uphold something in order for you to say that it's morally justifiable, right? So what happens if like the 80% of the country thinks slavery is okay? Or 90%? What if 95%, right? Just because a great number of people say something doesn't change the principles. It's going to be a principle. So let me just finish really quickly. I have a principled position that a person is innocent until proven guilty, and simply a preponderance, or I'm sorry, simply a higher volume of people doesn't change that. Especially when we know that there's inconsistencies in a big portion of the volume, and we recognize that there is a motive attached to these other testimonies.
Because I think that's something you're saying too.
So for a great deal of them, some of them literally tried to launch books from it. Some of them literally tried to get a lot of them knew that they would be receiving financial compensation for some of the interviews and things from them being from what?
Have there been books and interviews?
Sure. What was her name? It was one of the chicks. She literally launched a book from it. She was a black girl. No. I mentioned. No. It's not one individual. Obviously, Janice Dickinson released a book. Clearly, all of these women were doing all of these various interviews across all of these various platforms in which you are paid for those things. Some of them literally were seeking out trying to get a documentary. Plenty of them have literally tried to make defamation lawsuits by him simply saying that's a lie. So there were all trying to do civil defamation lawsuits. I really wish I could remember her name, but she was a Creole and black woman. She did it. So there's a number of cases. What? Can I understand the idea of defamation?
No. Let me finish. I'm not being aggressive.
I'm asking you. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Is super famous, right? So she don't really need a book deal about this.
Wait, no, she literally testified against that in court. She said on the stand, I needed to write this book to fabricate it for money for my kids. While she used to be famous, it doesn't mean that she's not running into financial straits now. She is no longer has even like 1/10 of the star power. She was clearly in financial straits and admitted to that. So no, that doesn't matter. So that's not true.
Yeah. So, but okay, I can see that. That's fine. But my point is the fact that you can't even name the woman and you have to say she was Creole, sort of black. Clearly, she didn't get any sort of platform of this.
No, that's not true.
She's not a commentator now.
I'm terrible with names.
No, I know, but I don't know. I couldn't name a single Bill Cosby victim.
But that just because you can't name them, and because I'm particularly terrible with names, I can give you all of the surrounding information. I'm just happen to be horrible with names. She was literally on the front page of MSNBC and several other articles. She got more attention. I literally would, if it wasn't for her making these claims, I wouldn't have known she existed. So just because I don't know her name doesn't mean anything. I literally read one of them earlier today, and all I could remember was her last name was Thomas, and her first letter started with an E. I'm awful with names, but I know the surrounding details and information. She was a model.
That's fine. We'll leave that. That's fine. I'm just saying the motive to me is a little bit shaky, even though I agree that being suspicious and cynical that could be a motive is reasonable. I don't see the evidence in this case to support that is the motive, right? Okay? That's all I'm saying. In terms of a shaky story, that is going to happen in every sexual assault account. And the difference between what you're saying about morality and slavery and what I'm saying about testimony is that morality, a lot of people would agree, is shaped by social contract and agreement. So sure, a preponderance of people agreeing on the same thing may shape our morals. But a large number of people stating the same facts is not deciding about an abstract moral system. They are stating their understanding of reality. So comparing the abstract idea of morality to people recounting what happened to them in actual fact is different. They're not comparable.
They're not necessarily.
Do you understand why they're not comparable?
I understand why they wouldn't be comparable, except for the case in this specific situation where you have now a consistent narrative that's attached to something that was already tried, in which there was a deposition and the deposition became unsealed. And then after the deposition came unsealed, then you had other women coming forward with similar stories. So then at this point now, it seems reasonable to me to be able to say that it's very possible, not completely unfounded, that these same women got access to this deposition, just as I did, because it was released to the public, got access to this 200-page, I believe it was, deposition. And now that they have this story, now they have a narrative, now they start contacting this lawyer, Gloria, whatever, and then one person comes forward and another person, and they recognize that these persons are getting literal, actual payment for it. They recognize that some of these people, Cosby settled for on defamation suits just on him saying that they didn't do it, because obviously it was more profitable for him to do so, obviously because of the effects on the media. So like literally now you have, after these people have literally gotten multiple $1 million paychecks for being able to say that he defamed them, now you have more women coming forward. So I think at this point now, the incentive is there. Also, we already had the previous knowledge that Andrea Constrand in 2005 happened to have been civilly paid out for this. So this is not some unfounded thing where plenty of people get large paychecks for these kind of things. So to say that this is shaky is absolutely untrue whatsoever.
I didn't say that. I said, I actually agreed with you. I said very often people fabricate stories in order to get a payout, but I'm pressing X to doubt on the fact that this is the case in this situation.
Oh, I can't say for sure. I'm saying this is a possibility, and I'm saying it's a likely one, given the fact that some of them also were lying and found to have been lying. That's what makes me even more likely to be able to believe it.
You know what I find distressing about what you're saying, right? In terms of the stuff that is making you doubt the stories, it's the stuff that will occur in almost any case with a serial rapist, right? So when you tell me that people came out after one woman or two women or three women came out and were believed, that is going to happen anytime there is a serial rapist, because it is a big deal to come out against a predator. Yeah. It's a huge deal. So if you're saying, oh, to me it's sus that it wasn't until these other women came out and there was a deposition that people could access, a deposition which I'm sure those women read, because I'm sure they wanted to be looking at the deposition and seeing if what happened to them looked anything like what happened to this other woman, right? Yeah. They wanted to see if the fact they felt uncomfortable about what happened qualified as a sexual assault.
But you don't know. So but you don't know that.
Total sense. That's
okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It did qualify. I'm just like, I'm saying it makes sense to me from the perspective of a survivor that if I had not come out about my abuser and someone else came out and said that person abused them, I sure as shit would want to get that testimony, and I sure as shit would read it. And if I resonated with what happened in there, you know that then I'm going to come out and say something. So my concern is that when you say, oh, it's sus that someone came out and there was a deposition and then all these women came out and they wanted to speak publicly. And another reason that women often speak publicly about extremely powerful figures who abuse their positions is because they know it is unlikely that anything will happen in the judicial system. So maybe they get paid, because that might be some of the only compensation they ever get, by the way. But also maybe they speak out in a public space because they want people to know that Bill Cosby did something to them that is unforgivable, and they want that known on the public platform. So the very power that he used to get access to them is corrupted a little bit.
Okay, so there's a few things, right? Like, so you made the sense. It makes sense.
You're muted, buddy.
I'm sorry. So I understand how that makes sense to you as a survivor, right? Like I can get how that makes sense.
I didn't say that. I'm saying if I was.
If you were, right. I'm sorry. If you were a survivor, I can understand how, like, logically that this would make the sense. But I would also like to say that there is an equally competing narrative, and I don't think that there's any evidence to support that your proposition is more valid than mine. The other narrative is someone recognizes that a person got a $3.38 million settlement for claiming something that necessarily wasn't able to be proven, obviously in a criminal court, because it was settled. So then they recognize that this person was willing to settle this thing. They know that this person happens to be one of the most wealthy black individuals on the planet. They now see that we're in the middle of a Me Too movement, which is doing everything in its power. I think a good thing to elevate. I got you. Hold on, but it's doing it. I know, but yeah, but they're doing all of these things that are trying to elevate the voices of victims and elevate the voices of those who have typically been silenced. And I think that's a good thing to do with intention. I think the intention there is great. But knowing that at this moment right now, the media is intentionally going out and looking for all of these stories because there happens to be a really strong narrative, recognizing that that person got paid and that I could also possibly get paid. I could also see a lot of women going out in that specific thing, recognizing that they have potential to be able to take money from this 86-year-old man, or I think at the time he was around 83 when he was finally charged, but some super duper duper old man, and be able to get like a lot of wealth there, and probably with no ramifications, and literally set themselves up for life. And one other portion, I can also understand that a lot of these women feel completely spurned by the fact that he didn't necessarily benefit their career. There are plenty of people who came forward and admitted, but Bill Cosby absolutely directly impacted my career and helped me. But I could see some woman thinking if I gave up some whatever and then he didn't end up following in up on his end of the bargain, I would feel spurned, such that if I could go ahead and get some money what I feel I would be owed, I think I could see that too. So I think these things are equally probable. I don't know, what evidence do you have to suggest yours is more likely than mine?
The entire database of empirical research on rape and sexual assault prosecution and how that plays out. Like I really want to, like, I'm getting a bit upset now, Fanatic, like, because what you're saying, while I'm willing to give you the space for warranted doubt, and I'm willing to give you concessions on the fact that these things do occur, and so I can understand why you feel this way. But when you say, based on the fact that these women dared to profit in any way, right? God forbid that someone makes a buck.
But please don't mischaracterize it that way. That's not what I said. I'm not saying because they profited that makes them wrong. I am extremely clear, and I will say it one more time, and I need you to listen because you tried to interject a bunch of times, and I think that means that you weren't actually listening. Actually listen this time, and I'll say it clearly. What I said was, the fact that this is a probable or a likely or a potential outcome, I think that the narrative you showed me was something that is reasonable, it is viable, it is possible. I'm showing you an alternative narrative, and I don't know that you have any evidence that makes your narrative more valid than mine. That's all I said.
And I'm telling you that no sexual assault victim will ever have the evidence you require. Ever. I am saying that when you say that these women are doing it for money and are doing it for publicity, and the fact that they dare to speak out when they know that they cannot take a route through the law, they cannot receive justice through the law because the statute of limitations is gone, because they don't have the evidence that they require, that because they dare to talk about what happened to them, that they are necessarily lying, and not only lying, that they're money hungry. I'm saying that no one will ever meet what you require as a reasonable doubt standard. And it is, I understand when it comes to wanting to protect people who are important to civil movements. I understand that sex crimes can be used to cancel people. I understand that consent is a fucking shithouse measure when, yes, many of these women consented. I understand. But what I am saying is you are being so unfair, not just to these women, but to all women who live through a sexual assault by the requirements you are putting on them in terms of their behavior after an assault and in terms of what they're required to produce in order for you to believe them. And if 50 women have inconsistent testimony, but consistent enough about the same man, and that's still not enough for you to even say, you know what? I don't think he should be in jail. I don't think it's enough for that, but he probably fucking did it, and he probably shouldn't be in a position of power. I'm not saying say that he's a monster and a criminal and never did anything good. I'm just saying admit to the fact that he probably used his position of power to abuse these women. Then no one will ever meet your fucking standard ever. And I am listening to you, and I am being so charitable, and I am still manning every argument you put forward. And the fact that you won't even give an inch to survivors is extremely distressing.
Okay, so first off, I don't think that it's true whatsoever that no one would ever meet my requirements. This specific case doesn't apply to everyone. Most of the time when people are coming forward, it's not about specifically hyper wealthy people. There are plenty of people who come forward about cases that don't involve any power structures whatsoever. And in those cases, those women wouldn't already have this immediate presupposition or this immediate assumption or this immediate suspicion that there's a potential that they're doing it for money. So there are plenty of sexual assault victims who actually meet these requirements. Plus, we have all of these evidence where cases are made immediately preceding a freaking assault. Plenty of people come forward about assault really, really quickly. So don't ever try to sit here and juxtapose or extrapolate from me right now that somehow I'm making this assumption about all cases. We're talking about one specific case about, no, I'm going to finish. We're talking about one specific case with one specific man, with one specific witnesses, and you're trying to generalize this to apply towards all victims, which is posturing and absolutely untrue. I do not like being mischaracterized this way. I'm not making a broader statement. We're talking about this specific case with these specific confines, with these specific proponents. So don't sit here and try to do that.
Okay, I'm sorry that you feel like I mischaracterized you, because I really have been trying to listen to you and represent you not only as honestly as I'm hearing you, but presenting the strongest versions of your arguments that I can, right? Because I agree with you on a lot of things. I'm not generalizing your point out to all rape victims. I'm telling you,
You did.
for your own sake. Okay. Well, I'm telling you for your own sake how I feel it's coming across as someone truly listening to you. And we do have to generalize to a point, because when I'm generalizing, I'm telling you about how sexual assault cases are decided. I am using the general empirical data we have about how evidence is collected and assessed in sexual assault cases. So when I'm generalizing, I'm taking the existing empirical research that we have that explains how we prosecute sexual assault, how we determine guilt in a sexual assault case, and I'm bringing that to you and saying it is common for women not to come forward straight away. It is common for women to be confused about their stories. It is common for women to feel guilty and feel that they played a part. It is common for women to go and seek media sources or gossip culture, talk about it on social media when they know that the police either won't believe them, they won't have enough evidence for a court case. All of these things are not atypical. And when you present them as suspicious, you are invalidating a great deal of victims' experiences. I'm not saying you're some monster or you're doing any, or you hate rape victims. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to get you to see that in a lot of cases, the facts are very similar, not just when it's a celebrity. In so many situations, the facts are similar.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things, or there's one really simple thing. So let me ask you, because I'm not denying that these are all potential problems associated specifically with these cases. I think we can point out to where plenty of cases where the justice system has specific outcomes that are somewhat harmful that we would want to make better, but there are specific complications, right? Like, for example, in murder cases, very often in specifically Black communities, that there's a lot of people significantly less likely to corroborate with the police. I wouldn't then say, well, since that's the case, let's lower this barrier so that we can start criminalizing more people without evidence. And that's what I feel like you're doing here. So let me ask you this question. Given that all of these cases, like, these are typical properties associated with it, do you think that we should lower the barrier for guilt associated with sexual assault cases?
That's a great question. It really is a really good question. It's part of what I spoke to Prime about yesterday. So I don't think we lower the bar in relation to guilt. I think we need to change the standards we use to assess sexual assault, not lower the amount of evidence you need, but look at the evidence differently. I personally take real issue with sexual assault even being dealt with in a punitive legal system. I don't think it's the best way to approach it. I think what is most important to victims of sexual assault is truth-telling, the ability to get accountability out of their abuser, the ability to have their questions answered. And I don't think that a punitive legal system creates a space where people are willing to tell the truth about what they did. So I don't think that the legal system works at all, right, for this sort of thing. So I mean, you might be, I'm sure that on a different panel, you'd be like, no, put all rapists in jail, burn them, put them on the sun. Like, and I'm saying I would rather, and say, I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel that way at all. I would rather that Bill Cosby had a space where he could be honest and say publicly, to give his victims a sense of relief that he did this, that he knew what he was doing, that he had a specific intent when he did it, and that he didn't acknowledge the humanity in his victims when he did it, nor did he respect their desires when he did it. And that, to me, would be fine. It's not about lowering evidence to get guilt. I want the guilt to come from him. I want to create a space where he admits to what he did. So I'm not out here saying
Yes,
like,
you did
let's
it.
lower the bar so we can chuck all men in jail. Well, I mean, but this is what I come back to, Fanatic. If he didn't incriminate himself in the civil case, how are his Fifth Amendment rights violated by that testimony being used to come after him in the criminal court?
Oh,
Clearly,
sure,
he
I can
said
answer that
something
question for you. It's a great question. And I think that it really points out something that I've always felt was problematic within our judicial system, right? It's that the barrier for proof for a criminal case differs from the barrier for proof on a civil case. On a criminal case, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. On a civil case, I forget what the exact phrasing is, but it's significantly lower than that. So now at this point, you can use this deposition against him in a civil case. And then again, it wasn't even that he was found guilty in a civil case; he settled it. And so I think that's why that's where the violation comes from. We understand that there is a difference. This is why O.J. Simpson was not found guilty in his criminal case, but he was later on found guilty civilly, right? Because the barrier for proof is totally different. There was obviously reasonable doubt, but reasonable doubt is not enough in a civil thing. And so that's the difference in those two things.
Okay, but can you just, I'm not very good on the law because I hate justice system. So can you explain to me though, right? Obviously the barriers for guilt are different, but the testimony doesn't change, right?
Sure.
So the testimony that he gave in the civil case, it has nothing to do with what, like they didn't say in the criminal case, well, he was found guilty here and that's the evidence we have. They took the actual testimony and transplanted it.
Right,
so,
but you know he wasn't tried or found guilty in a civil case, right? You know that he settled it, right?
Sure, but what my question is like, what evidence, like how does the levels of guilt, how does that affect the actual evidence? Because to me, the incriminating part is the evidence, not the guilt.
So in the civil case, okay, they decided not to try him criminally. Then afterwards, there's a civil case in which during the deposition, he says certain things that they then take out of context. One of the things that they asked him directly, did you ever have Quaaludes, or did you provide Quaaludes to women, or did you buy Quaaludes for women? And he said, yes. He admitted, I recreationally, key word there, recreationally took Quaaludes with women. Sure. So he admitted to that. That's what people have been running with in order to say, so he admitted to giving women Quaaludes. Because see, once you give that admission that I willingly recreationally took Quaaludes with women, now people can take that and say, so he did give women Quaaludes. When the competing narrative is that he gave Quaaludes to women without their narrative, you can then run with just the statement, Cosby admitted to giving Quaaludes to women. I was just on a panel just a few hours ago where people were saying Cosby admitted to assaulting women. He admitted to drugging women without their knowledge. They've moved the narrative so much further from what he actually said. I know what he actually said because I read it with my own freaking eyeballs. So now at this point, okay. And so
I'm going to bring in, I just want you to know, I'm going to bring in one additional person into this. Right?
I feel like we had a good
later on. But
okay, I got you.
No, don't. No, both.
I don't think we got where I wanted us to get, but I think we've got places.
Let me just finish this one last point so that we can update really quickly. So after that civil thing was dropped, they then went on to retry him in a criminal case, right? Which is not legal because at this point, and then the person who made the claims originally that he was doing it, the district attorney, literally admitted and testified in court that he intentionally did this so that he wouldn't have his Fifth Amendment right. He literally admitted to it. I don't know if you can get a better smoking gun than that.
No, Fanatic. And to me, they're totally separate issues. I completely agree with you on prosecutorial misconduct. We have no debate there whatsoever. I was asking you specifically about what evidence was taken from the civil case that was incriminating in the criminal case, because for it to be incriminating, there has to be something in that evidence which suggests guilt. So I was just wondering what that was.
Sure, but you understand that just simply a suggestion of guilt means almost nothing in a country in which we have 1,800 exonerations a year on black men, right? They make up 47% of the exonerations. You understand, right?
You're not going to find me advocating for the justice system. I'm a prison abolitionist. I
Okay,
don't think rape.
That's great to me. So then that means good. So then that means that you understand why simply referring to the fact that something was guilty doesn't imply that someone actually did the actions, right? You can't necessarily extrapolate those.
What I'm saying is there must have been something incriminating I'm not saying guilty. You're
But-
telling me that we need for you to believe that there was any sort of crime. You need evidence. You need beyond reasonable doubt. So I'm just wondering what happened there, and if that would get you any closer. That's all I'm wondering.
Sure. So I'm answering the question by pointing out to you that you're
I'm going
embedded.
to provide you with a direct quote.
Wait. Let me finish. Let me respond to her thing really quickly. When you say there must be something incriminating, I don't feel like I'm being uncharitable to interpret that to say that in order for him to have been guilty, there must have been incriminating evidence. And I'm saying that the evidence itself wasn't incriminating enough, and we have evidence that plenty of cases in which someone says if someone is found guilty, there isn't sufficient evidence. And I think this would be one of them.
I understand how you misheard me. Sorry, Amanda, I'll let you in. I wasn't saying that the evidence that was used to find him guilty was enough. I'm saying in order for his Fifth Amendment rights to be violated, there must have been something he said in that trial that was used that suggested guilt. I'm not saying it was enough to prove.
Oh, sure.
Guilt.
Yeah, we already went over that. We went over it. It was his suggestion that
and now I'll let Amanda in. I'm just going to grab a glass of water.
Okay.
Yes. So Fanatic, you keep saying that he didn't admit to raping or assaulting women. You also have stated that the media has misconstrued, his comments and stuff. But like we've been talking about, there were different cases. So there were first the civil cases that sparked the criminal proceedings because more people started to come forward. And so there, like you were saying, there's different standards of evidence. In civil proceeding, it is preponderance. Oh gosh, now it lost me. But then of course, criminal is. Thank you. Yes, and then beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal proceedings. Now, in the civil case that was settled, Bill Cosby did state. Well, let me back up a little bit. So, on the panel, you stated something about bringing alcohol to break bread. And then, having sex isn't rape, right?
Not necessarily rape.
Like, sure. Yeah, yes, yep. And then Prime, went over all that and explained how there's a spectrum. Well, in the civil case, there was this, I'm going to read you a quote, okay? It says, when you got the the qualads, thank you. Was it in your mind that you were going to use those for young women that you wanted to have sex with? Yes, Cosby answered. Did you ever give any of those young women them without their knowledge? And then his attorney objected, and that question was no longer answered. So since there was intent there, would you say that then is rape?
Wait, no, not necessarily, especially when you know that people, when people take drugs recreationally, and they're a common recreational drug, you would have to prove that he intended to give them to the women surreptitiously, which you don't have any evidence from that initial statement. You would have to prove that he gave them such amount that it incapacitated them, which you don't have admission of from that statement alone. So you don't have enough evidence to suggest that he drugged women. You don't have enough evidence to say that he raped women. If I intend to bring liquor to a house in order to have sex with the woman, there is a spectrum. I can bring too much liquor, or I can have them consume too much liquor to the point that they're incapacitated, and then that would be rape. Or we can consume a responsible and reasonable amount, at which point you would not be able to say that I raped somebody off of that statement alone. That's all you have?
Except for then but that's not all that's there. We have, 50 some other women that came forward, which I understand your argument in regards to that some people are lying. Yes. No.
This feels like a gish gallop. This feels like a gish gallop.
Let her finish. Please.
Okay, she can continue the gish gallop.
As Joe was explaining, there isn't often evidence in rape cases. So we do go off testimony. And so I don't understand why you can say that one man is telling the truth, whereas 50 women are probably lying to get a payout. So what is the difference here in this testimony? And why are you holding weight on one person over survivors? And I don't understand this logic.
So
statistically, women don't come forward. You were saying it's as probable, but it's not. It's not as probable for women to come forward for reasons other than being victims.
Okay, so that was a complete gish gallop, and I'm not going to move forward, and I'm not going to address any of the things that you just said until we address with the first thing that we were actually dealing with, because you literally just moved the conversation to something totally different. Right now, we were discussing whether or not Cosby admitted to drugging and raping women, and you tried to read that off as if it was somehow an admission of rape. Are you willing to admit, we're going to continue to deal with this, and then we can move forward to other stuff, right? So are you willing to admit that him simply saying, I brought Quaaludes with the intention of giving them to women for sex is not admission of rape or guilt or intention to give them to them surreptitiously or intention to incapacitate people? Is that a founded statement? That's probably too much. Let's say it really simply. Is simply bringing Quaaludes an admission of intention to incapacitate women?
No.
Okay, that's one. Hold up. Nope. We're going to go through it. We got to go through them. Okay. Secondly, is there proof just in his admission that he was bringing Quaaludes to incapacitate, to give to women? Is there admission that he gave them to them surreptitiously?
I think yes, based on all of the people.
So, wait, no. That's not the question I asked. That's not the question I asked. That's not the question I asked. The question I asked was specifically in that single sentence that if you need to quote it again, you can, that I brought Quaaludes and I intended to use them on women. Is there admission that he did so or intended to give it to them surreptitiously in that statement alone?
Why are we honing in on one exact statement? We are collectively that's how a court case works. You collectively bring in testimony and all of that. So let's not just hone in on one exact statement.
We will
literally.
Okay.
You are literally saying that this guy likely or are arguing that he did not rape people when the preponderance of evidence in this, well, like you said, that was actually settled. So it wasn't, agreed or guilt or not guilt, even though that's not how civil cases work. But now I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
So the reason why I'm honing on this is because you specifically said that you had evidence that you wanted to read specifically to address it. I'm willing to entertain everything. It's not like I'm trying to restrict the conversation to one specific thing. However, you cannot use this thing as a foundation if it in and of itself is shaky. Building a house on a shaky foundation means you're going to end up in disaster, right? It can't stand. So in this specific case, this specific piece of evidence, we need to get to the bottom of that. After you have admitted that it is no longer that you can't divine from that single information, from that single sentence that means he was trying to rape people or that he was drugging women against their consent or anything of that nature, then we can move on to other things. But we need to stay here first, then we can go there. But what you're trying to do is give me this very loosely and then juxtapose that next to, well, there's a whole bunch of testimony and say that these two things stand up when it does not. That's why we're focusing on the one thing.
Okay, and that makes sense. And so I guess my thing is with that test. So the whole time on the other panel, the intent on giving someone drugs and whatnot. But the intent was to bring drugs to have sex. That was what he said. It was intention. So whether they agreed to it or not. Now, based on the victim's testimony, it was not consensual. So he literally used drugs to rape women.
Okay. So yeah, the way you're lining these things up is just definitely smarmy. So there's a few things, right? Again,
come on, fanatic.
Is it not?
Wow.
By definition, it's literally
no.
Okay, go ahead.
You're better than that. Because I agree with parts of what you're saying, right? I agree with the fact that by itself, you can't use that evidence to prove rape. I also agree with the fact that it's silly to jump from the idea that it's like, oh, you took drugs, you gave someone drugs before sex, therefore that's rape, right? Lots of people take drugs and have sex. Lots of people do that on purpose. They take drugs to have sex. So I understand your point there. But this is not isolated evidence. It's that evidence in addition to many, many, many testimonies, enough that a jury felt that the preponderance of evidence was enough to counter reasonable doubt.
Okay, and the reason...
So my question is, what did you see in that evidence that made you feel that that entire jury was wrong?
Okay, so the thing that I wanted to push back on is because literally, like you're trying to say that these things juxtapose, right? Like if we're taking them, like in a compound compositional logic, then we can probably try to say or try to infer this. And I'm saying that this doesn't work, and here's why: because the first thing in and of itself isn't enough. So then juxtaposing it next to other things doesn't somehow make it more. What really boils down to it does not. It does not. What it really boils down to is whether he had made that testimony whatsoever or not, you would still be making the same exact statement. Well, 50 women have made this claim. That would be enough for you. So then trying to juxtapose the two to me sounds ridiculous, especially when I think the first one is not an admission of any kind. The second portion of what you're talking about in isolation is really what the argument is, and you're just looking for other things to try to support it, which don't necessarily support it.
No, I mean, like, to be honest, I'm quite honest about the fact that unlike you, I didn't really give a shit about the case. I haven't read it. That's why I keep asking you what is in it. But to me, I think it is important if a bunch of women say, then he gave me drugs and I didn't consent to the sex after and I was raped. And then there's testimony that says, yeah, I bought drugs with the intent of having sex with people. Those two things together, even though individually neither of them constitute rape, together that creates a preponderance of evidence. And I understand why a jury would say that that meets the requirement of beyond reasonable doubt.
Okay, so then
I don't understand how you can.
Sure, I got you. So let me walk you through it really quickly. Let me walk you through it really quickly. So
please.
In that case, because again, I got you. So again, if I decide I'm gonna give woman a blunt before we engage in some sort of sexual encounter, and we're both going to engage in freaking marijuana, and then later on she says, well, and so then they ask me, did you give that woman a blunt? And it's like, yeah, we both smoked a blunt together. And then it's like, okay, and then later on they say, well, she did say that there's a consistency here. She did mention that he gave her a drug, so he's now admitting that he gave her a drug. So now we have enough to say that it's rape. And it's like, no, that is so weak. You cannot reason that way. That's not logically deducible.
If that's what it happens,
and that's the Cosby situation.
No. Yeah, kind of, I guess, if you want to present the information in that way, right?
What's different?
This is why wait, let me tell
Okay,
you
I'm sorry. That's my fault. That is 100% my fault. I apologize. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So you know how before I told you that the one thing I do know is that in the law, consent is not a binary thing, right? It's something that's more like a sociological investigation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if it's not the fact that these women were like, oh, I didn't really consent to the drugs, or I did consent to the drug. It's the fact that if you are smoking a blunt with a chick and then you get down to it, right? I'm assuming that I'm assuming, and I hope and I know you, and so I know that this is the case, right? But you would not do anything after smoking that weed that you weren't 100% sure that woman wanted, because you respect that woman's autonomy and her desires, and you don't want to violate her in any way.
Of course.
So what is happening here is women are saying, even if I said yes to the Quaaludes, I didn't say yes to the sex after, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the sociological investigation about whether or not consent was given relates to the sex that came after the drugs, not consenting to the drugs themselves. So the fact that he took drugs with women, no issue. The issue is, did the women consent to the sex, not the drugs? Having drugs and fucking, no big deal. No big deal whatsoever. Having drugs and having sex with someone that hasn't consented to that, having drugs where they lose their ability to consent because they can't physically,
sure,
that is a different situation.
I totally
and so what
agree.
I'm saying is, it's not, I agree with you. That evidence saying that someone gave someone drugs is not enough to jump to rape. But the question here is, you've got 50 odd women, if more, saying, yeah, I took drugs with this guy and then I woke up and we'd fucked, and that is not something I consented to. And that is different to him being able to say in any sort of way, she consented to the drugs and we'd been sexting, and well, I mean, this is ages ago, so that wouldn't have been happening. But I have enough evidence to show you that I had reasonable belief that I had consent to have sex with her. Right?
Yeah.
After we had consumed intoxicating things.
Right. So then really now we have two conflicting testimony. Him saying we engaged in recreational drugs and we had consensual sex. He literally said those words, if we need to find the quote for it. And you have her saying, in some cases, I didn't consent to the drugs and I didn't consent to the sex. Some saying I consented to the drugs but didn't consent to the sex. And now at this point, it's two conflicting. And now at this point, we have two conflicting testimonies. And I'm trying to wonder, because I get, now that we have this at least agreement, that simply admitting that you took took drugs does not mean that you weren't able to consent. So since we were able to agree there, I'm wondering what's moving you from that position of I'm not sure, we don't know, to we know that he raped them.
Okay, so I'm never saying that we know for a certain fact that he raped them, right? I am saying that we can actually take the drugs out of the picture because, as we've established, drugs don't really show anything either way, right?
Sure.
Now we're in what is the case for pretty much every sexual assault situation.
Sure.
He said, she said, right? And for me, the he said, she said, I'm going to fall on the she said when there are 60 odd she's.
Okay. I feel like typically I get you. Okay, go ahead.
I don't want him to go to jail. I don't want him to rot in prison. I want him to have the access to the power that he used to assault women reduced significantly so he cannot do that again, even if he's 86 or whatever. And I would love for him to be able to tell the truth so that those women get some solace from knowing that their view of reality is not fucking wrong, right? It is extremely comforting for someone to just say, yeah, that happened, right?
Of course,
that's
validation.
All I want, but that will never happen.
Of course, validation is incredibly
right?
important. And I think this is where we're running into a problem. I'm living in the United States of America, where obviously punitive justice tends to reign supreme. I'm recognizing already how we have a criminal justice system that works entirely against us. Maybe if we lived in a world in which we could say that, in which there weren't such harsh and ridiculous punishments against Black people for crimes, if we didn't have this unfair criminal justice system, it would be a lot easier for me to start erring or be a little bit less stringent. But given how damaging it is, given the system that we currently live in, I cannot be flippant. I cannot loosen this. I think that we have to hold on to the very obvious stringent and the stringent principle that innocent until proven guilty. And I think it has to be across all cases. Now, if we live in your utopia in which people don't get punitive justice, then at that point, then I probably would be a little bit more loose. Then I would be willing to say, I think that enough women have said it. I'm going to put a little pressure on him to try to get him to admit something. I would probably be a little bit more likely to do that. But when I see the destruction of a life, given when I see complete miscarriage of justice and complete manipulation of someone's constitutional rights, even though they're incredibly powerful, when I see obvious profit motive on the victims, when I see people misconstruing details and telling completely contradictory stories, admitting.
You don't know that.
Literally, she said the words out of her mouth. I lied to get a check. I lied for a check for my kids. Those were the words out of Janice Dickinson's mouth on the stand. She said it. Oh no, so I do know that about one, and I also know that on several other cases, women told multiple different stories. That what's it called? Even with Andre Contran herself, the district attorney himself said that she told contradictory stories. So we do know on multiple of these. Huh? Right. So okay, I got you. So now when you put all of those things together, right, in the same way you're talking about preponderance of evidence, I say when I juxtapose the profit motive, I juxtapose the amount of time, I juxtapose obviously that the story came out first in 2005, so now they had a narrative that they could go with. When I juxtapose all of these details together, then that's why I have to be really. That's what causes me to be that way.
I actually feel like what you just said is the closest we've got, right? Because this is why at the very beginning I said to you, I agree with you that the justice system is fucked. I agree with you that I understand why you feel that this person could be targeted. I understand the reality of race and the justice system. I understand the reality of sex crimes and the justice system. So I understand, and I am not and that's why I said to you, if we took the legal side out of it, would you be willing to admit even to a little extent that he did, knowing that, honestly, Fanatic, like, come on, we're on a Twitch panel, right? You saying that Bill Cosby did something wrong, not even that he raped people. You saying that Bill Cosby probably did something morally ambiguous is not going to land this 86-year-old man in prison.
Sure.
You personally aren't going to deplatform him. I'm looking at a chat that fucking hates you right now.
Of course.
When I know that deep down, if you took the legal shit out of it, there is a part of you that would recognize that probably something fucking bad happened here.
Well, there's a potential. I would say, look, because even if rape isn't a thing, I would say what sounds to me, what I feel like all the evidence points to and suggests is that what he did was dangle careers in front of women and like imply that he would help them with their careers in order to get them to have sexual relationships with them. And I think that that's pretty disgusting. I think that right there is manipulative, and I think that that's disgusting. I think that happened. I think again, because I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that.
Can I ask a question? Can I stop because I want to say something to that very point? I just have a question. Do you think that he dangled the possibility that something good can happen in their career, or do you think he ever put people in the situation where, whether he said it explicitly or not, they felt like if they didn't have sex with him, that he could ruin their potential career?
I think, listen, so that's one of those situations where I think I could see them believing that that's a potential, and
We're both in the entertainment industry. You know how like someone in a position who's like a bit more successful than you, like if you're in a position where you thought saying no to someone they had the power to end your career, that's a bit different to someone saying, if you have sex with me, I'll make you a star.
Sure.
There's a difference between if you have sex with me, I'll make you a star, and if you don't have sex with me, I'll blacklist you. There's a difference between those.
They are extremely different statements, and I would say that at this point that there are potentials for this, right? There are potentials for this. But then again, with those kind of things, I think when we start trying to charge someone with sexual assault, right? The nature of this conversation
we're taking the law out of it.
I got you.
Please.
Okay.
I
well,
agree. Fuck the law.
Okay. All right. So listen. I will give you this. We're going to move forward to this next portion of the conversation. So then I need you to say legally, you think that there should be no conviction of sexual assault for Bill Cosby.
Yeah, because there was prosecutorial misconduct. I said that when I first got on the call.
Okay, but we were talking about the evidence. And that's where I guess it's fine.
Well,
whatever.
I don't know the evidence.
Right. Yeah. So then so are you willing to say that you are unaware of any evidence that suggests he's guilty aside from inconsistent testimonies? I didn't have to say the word inconsistent. Aside from testimonies, you're right. Aside from testimonies, are you aware of any other evidence that can be used to convince him?
I'm aware that a jury of your peers, I'm Australian, found that there was enough evidence to, I don't know. So I can't speak on it. And I'm unwilling to, because so much sexual assault law is decided on testimony alone.
Sure.
So you saying that testimony isn't enough undermines the entire basis of any sort of legal recourse for sexual assault.
Right. But I think that's one of the
But
problems.
Wasn't it
There are false
overturned
accusations.
because he admitted to it?
No.
And it was a Fifth Amendment violation.
I mean,
So, like,
it was
isn't that the basis of the case?
I'm going to bring in one other person.
Okay.
But continue.
It wasn't overturned because he admitted to it. He never admitted to it. We already went through this piece of evidence. The piece of evidence that you're referring to that implies that he admitted to it was the piece of evidence in which you literally just admitted that from that we can't construe the idea that he was a rapist. From that thing alone, you cannot construe or cannot extrapolate that he's admitting to rape.
So I'm not going off of my exact quote. I briefly read something else about how it being overturned because his Fifth Amendment was violated, and he, yeah. So I don't have that quote. Maybe I'll go try to find another one. But I thought that was kind of the basis to it being overturned.
That was the basis. I'm sorry. That was the basis. That was the basis that they were using. That was the thing that they were saying was a testimony. But I'm sure. I'm sure. Just right now, you were willing to admit that from that statement, we cannot conclude someone was intending to rape someone. And furthermore, I think there's God knows how much context that clearly illustrates. Given the fact that Cosby in that deposition was clearly admitting, was clearly denying any form of rape whatsoever, I think then trying to extrapolate these words that he willingly admitted to is being incredibly uncharitable when we know the basis for which he was saying it. He was saying he literally said the word consensual. So if that's the case, the idea that you would then try to extrapolate he drugged and raped women, it's completely ridiculous.
What is that saying? What is that saying when you die, like if you die on a hill? I'll you know what, Fanatic, I'll give you 50 plus women's testimonies is enough for me.
Okay.
That's enough.
That's fine. So if 50 women's testimony is enough for you in our justice system, given how much corruption that we see, given all the profit motive, given when we saw inconsistent testimonies, given the fact that given how many people sought financial benefits and saw the financial benefits before they started doing so, if that's enough for you, then that's enough. But for me, given all of that other information, it is not enough. And especially when we're talking about criminally.
But that's why I keep trying to move you away from that, right? Because one, I don't think consent is a good standard for sexual assault. Two, I don't think the legal system does anything at all for solving the problem or for victims. So, or for it's silly. I want to move you away from that. All I want from you is for you, I'm going to say something really uncharitable, so
Fine.
just be ready to get angry.
That's okay.
All I want from you is to stop making statements that sound like you're saying any woman who's been sexually assaulted and made money or spoken publicly about it is a gold digger.
I didn't. That's
and a
crazy.
liar.
No. See, that's you're right. You're right. You did get me upset about it, but I'm going to go ahead and react calmly, okay? Even though I see that you're completely
Okay,
misconstruing my words. I will succeed. I have that much control when I decide to. So I think, yeah, of course, when I decide to. But of course, I have to make that decision, and I'm going to do so now. Okay, I don't think that any woman coming forward receiving monetary benefit necessarily invalidates their argument. I need that to be stated really clearly. Any woman coming forward receiving a monetary benefit does not necessarily invalidate their argument, or it doesn't make me question them automatically. What I would say, though, is if you have specific cases with all of these other previous things attached to them, it makes me question women in this specific situation. So I'm not making a statement ever in any way. This is not generalized to all other sexual assault victims. If you want to ask me other specific cases, I'm willing to go through those things. I do believe that there are cases in which women have been absolutely violated and they should receive monetary benefit. One such case would be someone like Harvey Weinstein. We have evidence that these people, that he actually did some of the things that he did, and given that literal,
have you seen that evidence?
we have, no, I heard it. There were literal audio recordings. Literal audio recordings.
So that's
I've heard it with my own earballs.
No.
Yeah.
No. I'm just trying to get a sense, because I'm like, oh, okay, so you're accepting their story. So what evidence did they have that was convincing to you? I'm still like in my head trying to work out like.
So what differentiates this one, right? And the thing that differentiates this case is that there was like literal audio recordings. So similarly, if Andrea Constrand was to actually get audio recordings from Cosby admitting to doing something like that, I would 100% accept it as truth, even if it was inadmissible in court. Even if it was inadmissible in court, I would personally say this nigga's a rapist. Freaking R. Kelly wasn't charged, but he's a rapist. Kevin Spacey wasn't charged, but he's a rapist, right? Like there's enough things where you can have certain types of evidence, right? That would like cause you to believe that a person is a rapist. And it's not going to be tied to just like a conviction or not.
But
yeah.
Fanatic, can you just give me like one, like you realize and you can admit it is very, very rare that a woman is going to be able to record her sexual assault.
Sure. So let me just say this really succinctly.
Especially if she's had quaalude.
Of course, yeah. So let me just say this for you really succinctly. It is very unfortunate that our justice system, it is an unfortunate consequence that because we have a hard burden of innocent until proven guilty, that sometimes we won't be able to prove that guilt and guilty people will get away with it. It's disgusting to me. It doesn't make the action any less heinous, and I think it's absolutely injurious. But that doesn't change the fact that that's the standard, and it should be the standard. So in this case, yes, it is harmful that people that wait 30 years in order to come forward, that they probably won't be able to get the justice that they deserve, right? And I say that's an unfortunate consequence. However, I think it's necessary in order to protect the innocents from being able to be manipulated and charged unfairly. I think that's an unfortunate consequence.
And I agree. Fuck the law. I'll say it again. I have no problem saying it.
Fuck the law.
But if they can't get justice in that way, are they not allowed to speak out about what happened to them and try and get justice? I think socially, but you're saying when they do that and when they make money off it that they're lying. Because there's
Can I ask a question?
It's not just that. There's a whole bunch of other details, but go ahead.
Yeah. So why can you say that like R. Kelly and the rest of the people that you mentioned definitely did rape or assault women, but not Cosby? Where are you?
I thought we were following the conversation.
The difference of evidence, I guess.
Sure, I thought we were following the conversation, but it's okay. I'll repeat it. Really
How are we not?
For instance, for R. Kelly, there was like a video recording. As far as I understand, it's like a video recording of one of his underage victims, and then she has him saying that he knows that he's underage while he's having sex with her. So it's like. It's unbelievable.
Sorry. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
No problem.
Sorry. I have kids, so sometimes I have to walk away from streams and I don't catch the whole thing.
That makes sense. That's fair.
Distracted. So yes, I'm sorry.
Joe?
It almost sucks. I don't want to say that it sucks that occurs, but like it's such a rare occurrence that someone is going to have kind of evidence that it almost sets an unreasonable standard for anyone who's sexually assaulted. Because the idea that
You keep doing that, Joe.
Oh, let her finish. Let her finish, please.
Okay, I don't care about the law, right?
She
I don't
already
think it's
said
appropriate way to
this.
deal
Like,
with
this is
sexual
so
assault.
ridiculous.
Fanatic.
I'm listening.
Come on.
I'm listening.
What I'm
but
saying.
I'm listening.
I know, but and so I know you're sort of listening. I want you to listen to me, right?
Okay.
What I'm saying is, in a situation like R. Kelly, where someone is being groomed long term, they know that when they walk into a situation that they're going to have sex with their abuser, right?
Mhm.
But in most cases, when you're sexually assaulted, you walk into a room not realizing that that's how things are going to play out.
Mhm.
So it's a lot harder to have a video set up or a recording there. And if you add in Quaaludes, hitting that red button is all the more complicated. And you know what's crazy? What if you consented to taking Quaaludes, not thinking that you were going to be assaulted after, and you wake up and you realize that someone, why would you press record? That you're almost suggesting that, and you're, okay, I'm exaggerating. I know I'm exaggerating
Well,
your
Cookie,
case, but I'm
just
saying
don't.
if you, no, please let me, for fun. Why not? It's a Twitch panel.
Because-
have some fun with me.
No, but that's
Okay?
not fun to me. That's not fun.
Let her please let her finish, and then you can respond. Of course, you know it well.
Okay.
In most cases, women don't know that they're going to be sexually assaulted. If you require hard evidence to prove sexual assault, it is not unrealistic that women should walk around wearing body cameras, because who knows when or who is going to assault us. Because if I consent to taking Quaaludes to someone, I should probably set up a camera in case while I'm passed out, someone decides to assault me. Because I should just realize that at any point I'm in danger, and I am responsible for proving that I am assaulted in any case where that happens. So I'm just going to walk around now, making sure that I am collecting hard evidence in case anyone decides they feel like assaulting me. That is taking your point to its extreme end. Right? But it is the extreme end of your point. I'm
Yeah,
sorry I
okay,
made you say
I know it's fine. Here, let me take your point to the extreme end. Since we don't have evidence for it, since we don't have any evidence, and it's so hard to come to evidence, then the extreme end of this is, in reality, what we should just do is, at this point, knowing that so many people are going to get away with sexual assault, we should just take all of them, anytime anyone claims anything about the person, and just immediately give a nigga the chair. Because, right, we just don't know at this point, and we're not going to be able to get evidence in the most examples of cases. So at this point, that's what we should do. Let's just give niggas the chair anytime there's a person that's making an accusation. That's the extreme. But do you understand? But do you see how ridiculous it is? Then why do that? Why are we? We're trying to have a real adult conversation.
No, Fanatic. You're making me. I get you're frustrated, but that makes me mad, right? Because you're like, oh, Joe, you're not listening to me. You want to know why that makes me mad? Because if you listen to me at any point on our panel today, or if you listen to me talk yesterday to Prime for hours, you would know that I do not believe in punitive punishment for sexual assault. So to suggest that anything I've said can be put to the extreme, that people should be put in the chair without any evidence, is ridiculous and nothing to do with any point that I've made.
Oh,
the extreme
sure.
of my
I love it. I love it. You're getting mad about it when you just did the same thing to me. I clearly indicated on several occasions. I clearly indicated on several different occasions, different people who I thought were absolutely guilty. I clearly indicated that there are different situations for different people in different circumstances without the financial profit motives that are associated with Cosby. I indicated both of those things. So for you to then take my words to somehow indicate that I believe that without any evidence whatsoever in any cases, or whatever the absurd thing is, that women should just walk around with body cameras, is absolutely ridiculous. You're doing the same thing, and you're getting upset about it when I parrot the exact same thing back at you.
I'm not upset. I said said that. Wait, Amanda, can I just get this out? You said that women need hard evidence in order for you to believe that they've been sexually assaulted. I took an extreme hyperbole, I hyperbolized that position and said that then women should probably wear body cameras so that we always make sure that we have, but given that we don't know when we're going to be sexually assaulted, we have hard evidence in case it occurs. Then you tried to hyperbolize my position by saying that people should be given the chair for any sexual assault claim without evidence, when I have stated multiple times that I'm a prison abolitionist. I don't believe in punitive responses to sexual assault. I believe in due process. Okay. I don't think that Cosby should be held for this because of this prosecutorial Gambit. I think it's tough because I'm really against Me Too. I really believe in show trials. I believe that sexual assault is used against people. I think the extreme of my position is probably something bad that I would hate. Probably the idea that if you have probably the extreme of my position is that you do require lower evidence in social situations to punish people. Yeah, I think the version of thanks, Gamby. The version of what I did to Fanatic that applies to me would be that if you have a preponderance of evidence at a lower standard in social situations, that it is okay for that person to face consequences based on that. And that's gross because it feels like cancel culture, which I disagree with, but I guess you're right. So I'm a big hypocrite, and I'm just as mad as Fanatic was, but I'm gonna concede to it because you're right, that is the extreme version of my point, probably. So yeah.
So okay.
I would say it's the extreme version. I would say because there are lots of it's very scalable. Like a single story I don't agree with, a single story with a lot of backing I don't necessarily agree with, but in a case where there is the evidence that exists, which I know that Fanatic doesn't find convincing, but 50 women's stories plus certain circumstantial details which align with those stories, plus a power dynamic which I don't think necessitates abuse, but provides an environment where abuse can occur and is more likely to occur. For me, that's enough for me to want, and the consequences I will be very specific about. For me, I want the consequences to be that the power that person abused in order to abuse women should be removed from that person.
Access to the producing.
Yeah.
So access to the producing. Can you explain what that means?
So I mean, like, if he's in a position where he has control over people's career. So if he's a showrunner on a huge show, if he owns a production company, if he has access where he can build someone's careers, this is the sort of access I want removed from him until he shows that, like, yeah, you're right. Okay, so maybe what I would do is, instead of removing anything, I just make it very clear that he's a fucking rapist. So then at least women knew that when they were walking into an interaction, and people knew that this is someone who, like, you don't want to necessarily be alone with until that person, depending on what kind of inconsistency it was, just because inconsistency is very common in recounts of sexual assault, especially as time goes by, especially if you add in something like Quaaludes. So the inconsistency, no, not necessarily. The money thing, it really depends how many of these people. Like, I think, because I'll be fair, like, look at the people who came out against Biden during the election, right? Like, I honestly believe that they weren't necessarily politically pure allegations being made against Biden. And I'm more than willing to say that, and I've said it many times, I'm more than willing to say that sexual accusations can be politically or financially motivated. So it would depend what the specific circumstances of that financial motivation were. And, like, if it's 60 women and every single one of them is getting, like, a huge payout, I just don't know. I don't know. And also in this situation, these are women who give very specific reasons for why they didn't come forward before, right? And so I'd need to see a bunch of shit. But yeah.
You maybe would need to see evidence of a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking for. You're asking for evidence of a conspiracy. Like, that's what it is, right? So, which is one of the reasons why I believe that, yes, Bill Cosby is a rapist. But I wanted to try to understand something. So we are understanding that we're outside of the legal sphere, right? Everyone seems to admit that American justice system is not great, and in fact, most justice systems around the world are not great when it comes to getting to handling sexual assault, right? It's just not a thing. However, right, understanding that this is what we're working with, right? We've talked about the amount of evidence that you can expect you to receive within a case like this, right? That oftentimes you only have testimony. Oftentimes it'll be years after the fact for various reasons, right? Oftentimes things can even be inconsistent, right? Like, inconsistencies can occur even for literally the best faith of victims, right? Of alleged victims, right? So even in those circumstances, oftentimes that's what you get, and you don't have, like, a physical evidence, again, because of non-use past. So knowing that, right, and working within a social sphere, is it worth it, right, for use for fanatics standard, right? Is it worth it for 50 possibly assaulters to go free to avoid convicting or canceling or whatever one innocent man? Is that what we're saying? Because it seems like the amount of evidence that would be required, even on the social sphere that you all been talking about, I mean, a lot of people would go free, or at least not be indicted, right, by society, as it sits. So, would you allow 50 to go free for that?
Sure,
It's turn one.
I'm willing to create a system in which I know that 50 guilty individuals will go free in order to make sure that not one individual who was wrong is convicted. I think that's a better system. I think if you have a system in which ever there's any individual who is 100% innocent can be charged and found guilty and their lives can be destroyed.
No. Outside the law. Outside the law. Remember, we're working outside the law.
Yeah.
I've said that
Listen.
multiple times.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I must have missed it. So listen, I genuinely don't care. I don't do group think. So if we're talking about something that's like extrajudicial, I genuinely do not care at all about it. I don't. Like, I don't think the court of public opinion means anything because I don't value other people's opinion. If they can literally say something like, "Well, he admitted to it," when they're reading something like out of context, or when they say literally just as long as multiple people say it, then that's enough for me. I can't value other people's opinions, right? The average person that I encounter thinks that O.J. Simpson is guilty, yet they didn't follow the case at all. And they're just literally following the media. Also, about 50% of our country voted for Donald Trump. If I'm supposed to be placing ideas on the opinions of my peer, they're going to vary wildly. I'm sorry.
I hear you. Yes. And I also hear what Joe has been saying, and what we've had a long conversation about this, like yesterday, and just in general, we've talked about this. That the law, right, justice systems are oftentimes a blunt force instrument to handle a problem that requires a scalpel, right? And so it's not the tool that is best served for this.
Mhm.
So if Joe's system were put in place, or if she fleshed it out for you, right, like she talked about previously, right, but she fleshed out a system in which we could deal with these things outside of a necessarily judicial realm, but like we understand coming together as a community to handle a problem, right? So this is not simply like the court of public opinion, right? This is people bringing these issues to the community, saying this is a problem, I need your help, right? And this is the evidence that we have. In that case, right? Not just a court of public opinion, right? Would it be okay with the evidence that we usually get for these things? And so the person's not going to maybe lose their freedom, right? Maybe we want to get them to admit, like again, what Joe said previously, like admit that this actually did happen, right? That something bad happened. Maybe I didn't even mean to do it, right? Maybe I'm not the monster that Bill Cosby is, but maybe I didn't mean to do it, right? But to do that, we have to go through this process, this community process. So in that case, would it make more sense to have such a system?
Well, one, I think that system would be really poor, and I'll explain why. Because I think punitive justice is absolutely essential for certain cases, especially for something like sexual assault. If I have a daughter and my daughter is sexually assaulted, simply the nigga having the space to be able to admit that he did it ain't enough. And I hope that he gets away so I can murder him myself.
It's not about you.
Right.
It's not about you.
But hold on.
About the victim.
It is about the victim. It is about the victim, and I think that she needs her validation, and I think she'll get that validation when she recognizes Daddy loves me.
And I can tell you what
I don't listen. I know from having family members who have been victims of sexual assault that they want the person to that I know that not just from my family members. I know that there are plenty of people who think that people who sexually assault people should get the chair. So it's not like this idea of punitive, the idea of punitive justice isn't something unique to me, or it's not something that isn't espoused by the vast majority of actual victims. So then trying to paint it as if this is something that's foreign is absolutely erroneous. So I'll go on with the statement that I was originally making before you interrupted here, that I believe
okay, I'll
that,
get a blanket.
Thank you.
I'll be right back.
Got you. I believe that the idea that people should be punished, that there should be punitive justice, is not something that's unique to me. And I don't think I would ever embrace the idea that it wouldn't be enough. I went into a specific anecdote or a specific idea about myself if it was my daughter. And I don't think that this is a foreign concept. I think the average man, if they found out that their daughter or their sister or any other female that they cared about was sexually assaulted, would want punishment for the other individual, aside from any other validation. Yes, you want that validation, but that validation shouldn't come at the cost of that person actually getting some punitive damage done to them as well. So I think it's hard for me to even entertain the notion that we're going to forego punitive damage in order to give someone some emotional validation, which I don't think is enough.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Because let's talk about this again. Like I said before, and you agreed previously. You agreed that these things occur on a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
That everything that we might construe to be sexual assault, right? And what a victim might construe to be assault, and then an assaulter, or sorry, the person on the other side anyway, might look at it, right? These things occur on a wide spectrum as to what we think is sexual assault. Okay, so understanding that, right? Understanding that in some situations, right, it's two individuals who've been within a loving relationship, right? And that they things happen, and one of them feels that it was not either consensual or because I know we don't want consensual is not enough of a framework, but it just feels that this was assault, right? That this they're usually fine, but on this day for a number of circumstances it was assault. That person, that victim, may not want the person they consider to have assaulted them. Let's leave aside their guilt for now. That person may not want that person, their assaulter, to go to prison, right?
Okay.
To get the chair, right?
Sure.
And that person could be your daughter, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Who's been in that situation, doesn't want that to happen. So to simply say that, well, every time they have to have some sort of massive punishment when that's not the case, and then okay, understanding we're in some sort of spectrum.
I'm not saying every time.
Right? Then understanding that we're in some sort of spectrum, that we're the situation where your daughter, again, since you brought that up, daughter might be, she decides that maybe this is worse than simply a lover's dispute or something like that went wrong, right? Maybe this is something serious, but still I'm not ready to go through all of the hassle, all of the trouble, all of the hurt, all of the pain for me and myself, for this other person. Because within that justice system, we're in this punitive justice system because of the barrier to evidence being so high, because of like what it means for me, what it means for him. It's just too much that I'm not even going to bother. So in that situation, I'm not even going to look for justice. I'm not going to tell my father about this. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm going to hold on to this for the rest of my life. Because that's all we have. That we only have that blunt force instrument rather than that scalpel. That scalpel that Joe is trying to imagine for us, right? So, like, wouldn't you want a separate system in that case, right? Where your daughter decides that that it's not worth it for me to get justice within the legal system. Maybe have a community-based system in which the person would first of all admit that they did it, if we get that, and then maybe get better, and then maybe not, and then also maybe not hurt someone else down the line, because your daughter could break up with them, and then this person, still not understanding what they did, hurt someone down the line. Would it not be better to have another system that allow for that?
I'm going to answer this really succinctly. No, I would never, ever advocate changing the systems because of the desires of a particular individual who thinks that something should be done extrajudicially. No. I don't think you change systems in order to make one individual feel better.
Can I just clarify something, Fanatic, just for the sake of like the conversation going forward?
Sure.
I reacted before, not because of what you said in terms of whether or not a punitive thing is justified. I reacted because as someone who talks about this area a lot, I really don't like to use trauma and knowledge of trauma as a legitimizing force for an argument. So I get that you have people in your family who've been sexually assaulted and you've heard how they feel about it, but I could just as easily produce a litany of women who have the opposite opinion. I could just
You
as
could
easily
not.
sit here.
In the United States. I got it. Go ahead. Finish your point. I'm sorry. Finish your point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't like trauma as a passport in terms of like being able to use it as something that gives you the authority to speak on.
I wasn't saying that.
You sort of did. No, you didn't. I'm sure you didn't mean to, but it is what you did when you made that point. You used other people's trauma in order to legitimize your point of view. No. And I could sit here and go, and I never will on a panel. I never ever will talk about any of my trauma. I won't bring up other people's trauma. I don't think it's appropriate. And so I get that you think that other women don't want rehabilitative justice and that other women want punitive justice because maybe that's what the women in your life want. But as someone who works in this area, I can tell you overwhelmingly qualitative research in America as well as Australia finds that most women, more than anything, want honesty and accountability from their abusers, something that is not fostered in a legal approach, which is punitive when it comes to sexual assault.
Okay, I look forward to you being able to supply me with that and with that data that would suggest that. Thank you. I'm looking forward to that. And I would say that obviously there would be probably notable differences. United States of America specifically focuses on punitive justice more so than most countries, which is why our prison industrial complex is so incredibly powerful. So I can understand why you, in your work, being an Australian, would encounter plenty of women of sexual assault who wouldn't. I got you. Hold on. I got you. You did eventually say that. Did you have data for that? And I'm looking forward to that because I'm pretty sure there's data to the contrary. And I can't wait to pick that data apart. However, what I would say is in this country, that the vast majority of people would be operating under the framework, which tends to be consistent with punitive.
Okay, so Joe might not like to use victim stories as a focal point, but you did it, and you know what? I'm going to do it because I do it often. Well, anyways. As someone that has been through the justice system in regards to sexual abuse and domestic violence, I am someone who is against punitive justice and is looking at a totally different system in a way that we could address these issues. So yes, and my trauma is what sparked me to start learning and researching and devolving into all of this information that I have learned. So no, I'm not an expert because of my trauma. I wouldn't even say I'm an expert because I've learned this, but there is a vast majority of victims that, what Joe said, that want accountability. So I'm an American and a victim, and maybe that will back some of that up more.
I'm incredibly sorry. I got it. Listen, I'm really sorry that you went through what you went through. I think it's absolutely atrocious. I think it's disgusting. I think rape is one of the most vile and grotesque things that any person can do. I think probably the only thing worse than that is murder. But in some ways, I think rape might be worse, or sexual assault could be worse. I think it's completely awful. I wasn't making the statement as if this was literally every person. I don't think that that's the case. I think that there are, whenever you're talking about the human condition, you should never use absolutes, or rarely ever. And I think this is not an exception. This is not the exceptional case where we should be using absolutes. And I didn't intend to do that, and I don't believe that I did in my speech. But if you guys interpret it as an absolute, then that's just wrong. I don't think that this is absolute, but I do think that the vast majority of people, and I think when it comes to things like traumatic things like rape and things, I think that the trauma, there is a psychological thing that they talk about called secondhand trauma, which happens for a lot of people. And this is something that psychologists are trained to deal with. And so sometimes it goes beyond just the individual who was raped to their family members, to their offspring, to their relatives, to their parents, to their whatever. And I think at that point, the idea that Americans in general focus on punitive justice is more what I was speaking to, as opposed to just the individuals. Although I would still maintain that the vast majority of individuals in this country are comfortable with people getting punitive damage when it comes to that. But we can revisit this at a later time. I think I really do need to go. If you guys have any closing statements, I'm willing to hear them, and then I'm gonna dip out.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure,
one
go
question.
ahead.
It's totally different from what we were just talking about. This is okay. Fun times. Imagine us, 5 of us. We're sitting around. playing some music. You're playing on the piano. I'm doing a little bit of singing. Or maybe we're smoking a little weed. Who knows? We're just like chilling. We're having a fun time, right? Get silent for a moment. We're all in our like weed thoughts. And I say to you, hey, like there's no lawyers here. There's no group think. It's just us. Do you think there's any chance Bill Cosby did it? Are you, because I'm not saying, I just want to know. I just want to know if it's just us,
Yeah.
we're chilling with a
No,
blunt,
I
playing
don't.
music.
I don't need it to be just us. I think there's a chance, but I think there's a chance for so many things. I don't think there's. I don't think I've encountered in studying it that there's any evidence that supports that he did.
Do you think he probably did it?
I don't know. I could not say he probably did it. Stop. I
Even
can't.
just instinct.
No,
I think he. Come on, 50, 60 women, come on. Maybe, probably.
That's not enough. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna. I don't modify it based off of just the number of people. I think that doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. Like, listen, look. Wait, hold on, really quickly. Listen. You never have to appeal to like the idea that I'm on a panel in order for me to be honest. I'm always gonna do my best to be honest, and I literally don't believe that there's any good evidence to suggest otherwise. That's what I'm basing it on. I can't change that. If you show me good evidence, I'm willing to entertain it.
My spliff circle was to see because of your comment about like groupthink. So I was like trying to get you away from any groupthink where there wasn't. I was seeing if you were contrarian or like what was going on. Or like, so I was just seeing if, just based on instinct and feeling and the fact that, 60 women feel super. And you just said all that stuff that you think that rape in many ways is worse than murder. And you just said how upset you would be if your daughter was raped. And I'm thinking there are 60 people's daughters who feel this has happened that don't get any justice in the legal system. So I'm just wondering if we were in a spliff circle, handing a blunt around, if maybe you would give me the fact that maybe he probably did something shady, right? That's all I'm asking you to give me.
I think that's
if you would give me that, and it sounds like you wouldn't.
No, that's too much. I can't say that he probably did anything shady because I don't think there's any good evidence for it. And again, I do think that these things. I think it's the posturing, right? Like there's a bunch of things where you like make the statement, like, well, I don't know. There's 50 women who feel that they've been raped, and I think that's what's already assumed by the conversation is, do they actually feel that they've been raped, or are they lying? Are they doing this for a paycheck? And I think that's been like the material of this entire difference right here. Stop.
You realize, Fanatic, like I can't stop. I'm in it. You realize that like women often even lie about sexual assault because they're like just not ready to talk about it, right?
Sure.
So if someone asks them, they're like, "Nah, man, it was totally fine. It was consensual. It was all good." And then later, when they feel a bit more comfortable, and that can make them look like liars when actually they were just trying to protect themselves. So that's
Joe's an actress.
I hear you.
Joe's an actress. That's how you know. But go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm not holding it at all. I'm not getting high. I'm going to green straight out. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, I feel you. Listen, I feel like a lot of times people do that thing too, right? And people do lie about having sexual encounters. I'm sorry, I just wanted to be silly. I'm not a good actor. I can't do it. I feel cringe. I'm sorry. I can't do it. All right.
I'm gonna green out.
Okay. Listen, I do think that there's plenty of situations where people do it, where people do lie about these kind of things specifically to protect the victims. Like, I mean, to protect themselves, where they feel like uncomfortable with that. I get that that's the thing. So all that leaves me with is an understanding for a platform, or I guess for a worldview in which these women did tell the truth, and they just withheld the information for reasons of like hoping to gain power. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe he might still bless their career, or even sometimes like I just don't know that I'll be able to be believed, or like for not having the social awareness about whether or not this thing actually happened. There's all of these reasons why, like, that explain why it's possible that the women like did this thing. Like, so I'm not denying the possibility that he did it, because it's all obviously possible. I'm saying without the evidence, I can't go that extra mile.
Can I just ask, with, I can't say the word, I'm sorry, the drug.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I'll never be able to say it. I have moderate hearing loss, so I do have speech problems. But anyways, how there's a very big difference between bringing a sedative drug with intent to have sex with women than bringing some alcohol and weed and intent to have sex with someone. Like, I mean, that drug specifically is like, I mean, it's very different from weed. You keep bringing, like you had brought up weed, and I know you're trying to go and stuff, but that's what I was trying to get at earlier with the like admitting to it because he understood the effects of the drug and got that prescription with the intent to have sex with women. That's where.
Sure. Do you think that there's a meaningful difference between Quaaludes and roofies? Or are they pretty much the same?
I honestly,
close,
I don't know.
Okay. Because it sounds like almost what you're implying from this is that like it would be something like a roofie.
Well, yeah. I guess from my understanding, it is a pretty sedative drug, especially when paired with alcohol.
Sure.
Like extremely sedative.
Okay, so I think that's where we're running into a problem, is because I definitely feel like, yes, it just definitely is sedative. Like there's no denying that. I think the implication, I think, and this was one born of the media, was that this was most people associate Quaaludes with something like roofie, and that's just not true. It is not roofing. It is not the same. It was recreationally done. I don't know of any historic recreational use of roofing. It's not a thing. That's not a thing. Whereas Quaaludes, it was. It was really, really, really common. Like in the United States, we've had like different drugs. Like in the 60s, let me see. Yeah, in the 60s and early 70s. He literally said the word recreationally, and the victims themselves on several accounts also admitted that they did the drug recreationally. Some of them willingly took the drug. So it was recreational.
Let me clarify
for
that.
them too.
Yes, that he did use. Yes, he did also use it recreationally, but he said that he got this prescription with the intent to use it to have sex with women.
Recreationally. Wait, hold on. Wait. Okay, we can stop this right here. This can be the smoking gun. Do you believe that Cosby admitted that he was getting Quaaludes for non-recreational use and not and to use to seduce women like surreptitiously? Do you believe he admitted that?
Sorry, can you ask that question again?
Do you believe that
not exactly admitted that, but he admitted that he got a prescription drug that has sedative effects with the intent to have sex with women.
Do you think that implies
there's no
that
other context around that?
I got you. I got you. So are you assuming that implies that he was going to be using it in order to sedate women so that they wouldn't be able to not consent? Do you think that that's what he was implying when he said it?
I guess, yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, it's been a great conversation. I love you guys. I'm sorry that I got so heated at certain points, but ultimately it was a good conversation. Listen, next time we'll pass a blunt around. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible actor. It was really good times.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for that.
I'll get you one day. I'll get you to admit you maybe did something morally.
Maybe.
We'll just keep.
Okay, we'll work at it. Well, I don't know. Probably. All right. Love y'all. Peace.
You'll have to get you really high.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be some real high, and you're gonna have to get me to lie. Peace.